Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. Tonight, we bring you a reimagined version of Ambrose Bierce's chilling tale, The Middle Toe of the Right Foot. This is not a simple retelling. It's a suspenseful adaptation, carefully rewritten to captivate modern audiences while preserving the haunting spirit of Bierce's original work.
Everyone in Marshall knows the truth. The old Manton house is haunted. Ask anyone in the countryside or even in town a mile away, and they'll tell you the same. Only the stubborn skeptics, those few who cling to disbelief, dare to argue otherwise. The evidence is everywhere. The house has stood empty for more than a decade, its walls slowly surrendering to rot and silence. Once a farm, the land around it is now a wasteland of broken fences, brambles, and soil that hasn't felt a plow in years. The mansion itself rises 2 stories high, square and brooding, its doorway sealed, its windows boarded, its upper rooms open to rain and wind. Grass and weeds choke the yard, and the trees lean as if trying to escape the place altogether. Locals whisper that the house itself seems to remember. They say its silence is not emptiness, but watchfulness. And they remind each other of the night when Mr. Manton, without warning, rose from his bed and slit the throats of his wife and 2 children before vanishing into the dark. Since then, no living soul has dared to call the place home. So when people say the Manton house is haunted, they don't speak in jest. They speak in fear and uncertainty. One summer evening, a wagon rattled up to the abandoned Manton house. 4 men rode inside. 3 jumped down at once, while the driver tied the horses to the last splintered post of a long collapsed fence. The 4th man stayed seated, his eyes fixed on the looming structure. "Come on," one of his companions urged, stepping closer as the others moved toward the door. "This is the place." The man did not budge. His voice was sharp, almost accusing. "By God, this is a trick, and you're part of it." The other met his glare with cold contempt. "Perhaps I am. But remember, you agreed the choice of ground would be theirs. Unless, of course, you're afraid of ghosts." "I fear nothing," he spat, leaping from the wagon with a curse. Together, they joined the others at the door, its hinges groaning with rust as it finally gave way. Inside, the darkness pressed close. A candle was struck, its weak flame casting long shadows across a square, empty room. Dust lay thick on the floor, swallowing their footsteps. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like rotting lace, swaying in the disturbed air. The windows were boarded, shutting out the world. No fireplace, no furniture, nothing but dust, silence, and the 4 intruders. In the flickering light, they looked uncanny, almost spectral themselves. But one man stood out, the reluctant one. Broad-shouldered, barrel-chested, his frame spoke of brute strength. His face, hard and furrowed, promised he would use it without mercy. Clean-shaven, gray-haired, his low forehead was carved with deep lines that cut straight down over the nose. He looked less like a man than a force waiting to be unleashed.
The man's face was a study in menace. Heavy black brows nearly met above his nose, saved only by a sharp upward turn. Beneath them, 2 small, sunken eyes glimmered in the candlelight, color uncertain, but expression unmistakably cruel. His wide jaw and thin, merciless mouth only deepened the impression. His skin was pale, almost bloodless, as if life itself had drained away, leaving only strength and malice behind. The others looked ordinary by comparison, men you might pass in the street and forget a moment later. Yet between the pale giant and the eldest of the group, who stood apart with a faint smile, there was no warmth, They avoided each other's eyes, as if the air between them carried old hatred. "Gentlemen," said the man with the candle and keys, his voice steady, "I believe everything is in order. Are you ready, Mr. Rosser?" Rosser bowed politely, a smile flickering across his lips. "And you, Mr. Brosmith?" The heavy man scowled, his bow curt and hostile. "Then you will both remove your outer garments." Hats, coats, waistcoats, and cravats were stripped away and tossed into the passage. The candle-bearer gave a nod, and another man stepped forward. From his overcoat he drew 2 long bowie knives, their steel flashing wickedly in the dim light. "They are identical," he said, handing one to each. Now the truth was clear. This was no meeting of friends. It was a duel, a fight to the death. Each man weighed his weapon, testing the blade against his knee, feeling the balance in his hand. Their seconds searched them carefully, ensuring no hidden advantage. "If it pleases you, Mr. Grossmith," the man with the candle said at last, "your corner is there."
Grossmith moved to the farthest corner, his second leaving him with a cold, perfunctory handshake. Rosser took the corner nearest the door, whispered briefly with his own second, and then stood alone. Suddenly, the candle sputtered and died. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Whether it was a draught or something unseen, the effect was chilling. "Gentlemen," came a voice, strangely altered, unfamiliar in the blackness. "Do not move until you hear the closing of the outer door." Footsteps echoed, the inner door slammed, and then the outer door shut with a violent crash that shook the house to its bones. Later that night, a farmer's boy on the road to Marshall swore he saw a wagon racing past. 2 men sat hunched in the front seat, but behind them stood a third figure, clad in white, its hands gripping their shoulders as they struggled in vain to break free. The boy, seasoned in tales of the supernatural, insisted the figure had leapt aboard as the wagon passed the haunted house. The story spread quickly, appearing in the advance with embellishments and an invitation for the gentlemen involved to share their version. None ever did. As for how the duel in the dark came to be, it began simply enough. One evening, 3 young men of Marshall, King, Sancher, and Rosser, sat on the porch of the village hotel, smoking and talking of matters that educated Southerners might debate. A 4th man sat nearby, silent, listening, but never joining in. He was a stranger to them all. Arriving that afternoon by stagecoach, he had signed the hotel register with the name Robert Grossmith. Since then, he had spoken to no one but the clerk. Silent, solitary, he seemed a man who preferred his own company, though the local paper, with its usual sarcasm, described him as addicted to evil associations. On the porch of the village hotel, 3 young men, King, Rosser, and Sancher, smoked and talked idly. Their conversation drifted into dangerous territory. "I despise deformity in a woman. Any physical defect must mean a defect of mind or morals as well." Rosser's reply was dry, mocking. "So a lady without a nose would find it difficult to become Mrs. King?" King bristled, but pressed on. "I once abandoned a charming girl when I discovered she had lost a toe. Brutal, perhaps, but had I married her, we'd both have been miserable." Sancher laughed lightly. "Instead, she married Manton and escaped misery only to meet a knife at her throat." "Yes," King admitted grimly. "She lacked the middle toe of her right foot. Perhaps that was why he killed her." At that moment, Rosser's eyes shifted. "Look at that man," he whispered. Grossmith was listening, his gaze fixed, his silence heavy. "Damn his insolence," muttered King.
What should we do?" Rosser rose smoothly. "That's simple." He turned to the stranger. "Sir, I suggest you move your chair to the far end of the veranda. Clearly, the company of gentlemen is unfamiliar to you." Grossmith shot to his feet, fists clenched, his face pale with fury. The others stood as well, tension crackling in the air. Sancher quickly stepped between them, trying to hold back the storm.
"You are hasty and unjust," Sancher said to Rosser. "This gentleman has done nothing to deserve such words." But Rosser stood firm, refusing to retract. In that time and place, there was only one way to settle such a quarrel. "I demand the satisfaction due to a gentleman," the stranger declared, his voice steady now. "I have no acquaintance in this region. Perhaps you, sir," he added, bowing to Sancher, "will represent me." Reluctantly, Sancher agreed. King, who had watched the stranger intently without speaking, gave a curt nod to act for Rosser. And so the matter was decided. The duel would take place the following evening. The terms were already known. Knives, in darkness, within the walls of the haunted Manton house. Such was the code of the Southwest, a thin veneer of chivalry masking raw brutality. Yet under the blaze of midsummer sun, the Manton house seemed almost innocent. The light poured over its weathered walls, softening their stains. Grass grew lush across the yard, weeds blossomed like flowers, and birds filled the shade trees with song. Even the empty windows, stripped of glass, seemed to smile with peace. Heat shimmered across the stony fields, playful and alive, mocking the house's grim reputation. By day, it looked harmless, but night was coming, and with it, the truth. When Sheriff Adams arrived at the Manton house, with Deputy King and Mr. Brewer, the brother of the murdered Mrs. Manton, the place looked deceptively calm in the daylight. The sheriff's visit was routine, a matter of law and property. Brewer sought to claim the estate, abandoned for years. King, however, carried a heavier secret. Only the night before, he had unlocked this same door for a far darker purpose. The sheriff pushed the front door open, surprised to find it unlatched. What greeted them inside was startling. A heap of men's clothing scattered across the dusty floor. 2 hats, 2 coats, waistcoats and scarves, all strangely well preserved despite the years of neglect. Brewer stared in shock. King's reaction went unrecorded. With growing unease, the sheriff opened another door. The 3 men stepped into a dim room. At first it seemed empty. Then, as their eyes adjusted, they saw it, a figure crouched in the far corner. The man was frozen in a grotesque posture, one knee bent, back pressed against the wall, shoulders hunched high, hands raised before his face with fingers spread like claws. His pale face was tilted upward, mouth half open, eyes bulging wide with terror. He was dead, stone dead. Nothing else was in the room. Only a single bowie knife lay on the floor, as if it had slipped from his lifeless hand. The dust on the floor told its own story. Near the door, confused footprints marked the struggle of entry. Along the boarded windows ran the faint trail of the man himself, leading to the corner where he had crouched. The sheriff bent to lift one of the corpse's rigid arms. It was stiff as iron, the whole body rocking as a single piece. Brewer, pale and trembling, stared into the distorted face. God of mercy, he is Manton. King forced a mask of calm. I knew him. He wore a beard once, and his hair was long, but this is Manton. What King did not say was worse, that he had recognized Manton from the start, that Rosser and Sancher had known too, and that the duel had been a cruel trick played on a murderer and coward. Rosser had fled the house in his shirt sleeves, forgetting his clothes in the panic. But none of this was spoken aloud. Instead, King tried to puzzle out the mystery. Manton had never moved from his corner. His posture was neither attack nor defense. His knife had fallen unused. He had died not by blade, but by terror, by something he had seen. Then King's eyes dropped to the dust, and there, clear in the daylight, lay the truth. 3 sets of footprints crossed the room, leading straight to the corpse. Bare feet, 2 small, belonging to children. 1 larger, a woman's. The murdered family had returned. The footprints told a story no living witness could deny. They did not return. They pointed only one way, straight toward the corpse. Brewer saw them first. He leaned forward, pale and trembling, his voice breaking with horror. "Look there!" he cried, pointing at the nearest print of a woman's right foot. "She stopped here, stood here. The middle toe is missing. It was Gertrude." Gertrude Manton, the murdered wife. Brewer's own sister. The children's prints flanked hers, small and delicate, leading with her across the dust. Together they had come back. Together they had claimed their justice.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.